Alexander Isak accuses Newcastle of breaking promises over his future, but Newcastle stand firm and deny they told him he could leave this summer. We've got every angle covered this hour on Transfer Talk. Eberechi Eze trains with his Crystal Palace teammates today as he talks over a move to Tottenham continue. Palace also make their move to find replacements. We'll tell you who they're targeting very soon. Alejandro Garnacho turns down a move to Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich with his heart set on one club. And a familiar face to the Premier League could soon be returning. Will we see Douglas Luiz in a Nottingham Forest shirt very soon? A very good afternoon to you at home and a good afternoon to Michael Bridge with me in the studio. But first, of course, to this remarkable story around Alexander Isak, who is once again dominating our agenda. Last night, he released a statement on Instagram accusing Newcastle of broken promises over his future, something the club deny. Liverpool, meanwhile, are still yet to make a second bid. Waiting to give us the Newcastle take on things is Keith Downey at the club's training ground. And Anton Talui is at Liverpool's training ground for us. Welcome along, both of you. Keith, I'm going to come to you first. There are always two sides to every story, aren't they? So can you please tell us Isak's and Newcastle's?
Yeah, Olivia, there are two sides to every story, and I think we've kind of all been waiting for most of the summer to hear exactly both sides' stories. Now, while neither went into detail in their statements last night, Newcastle's reaction to Alexander Isak's statement within about 3 hours, I think, and the speed that it arrived showed just how angry, frustrated, disappointed I think they are at the situation that keeps dragging on and on. Now, Alexander Isak decided last night to take to social media and discuss his situation due to, I think, the fact that the transfer window is ticking on what we're 12 days away now from transfer deadline day, and he's no nearer to a move away from the club. We've been telling you now for a number of weeks that Alexander Isak had told Newcastle he wanted to explore a move away from the football club, but as a result that has yet to materialise. And I think the crucial part of his post on social media last night was when he said, when promises are broken and trust is lost, the relationship cannot continue. That's where things are for me right now, and why change is in the best interest of everyone and not just myself. So as you said at the top, Olivia, he is saying that promises have been broken, trust is lost. He feels he was promised, as I understand it, a new contract over a year ago. That has not materialised, and as a result he is on strike. Newcastle responded 3 hours later, didn't they? And the most important part in their statement was the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. We have been clear that the conditions of a sale this summer have not transpired. We have tried, and we do not foresee those conditions being met. So Newcastle saying, essentially, they have tried to facilitate a move for Alexander Isak away from the club this summer. Of course, they tried to sign Benjamin Sesko, pipped by Manchester United, tried to sign Hugo Ekitike, ironically pipped by Liverpool, where Alexander Isak would like to move to. But they've failed in both of those, and the way they are talking, my reading of their statement last night is that time is running out for them and they don't see themselves being able to bring in an adequate replacement, which means Alexander Isak will stay and they want to reintegrate him back into the squad when he is ready.
Oh, this saga continues. Well, Anton, then what about the Liverpool perspective? Are they going to make another offer for Isak?
No, that's what we're all waiting to find out, isn't it, Liv? Because it's been a little while since Liverpool made their £110 million plus add-on offer early in the window, which was rejected. But as you can see here at Liverpool's training ground, they're all pretty relaxed. Remember, these are the Premier League champions. They're very happy with the squad they have right now. But we know it's going to be an interesting final couple of weeks of the window for Liverpool, not just because of Alexander Isak, but also because of the potential interest in Mark Guéhi as well. So, look, but as far as Liverpool are concerned, look, if they close the window right now, they'd still be pretty happy with the business they've done. They've obviously brought in Ugo Ekitike, who started so well. They've brought in Florian Wirtz, who's been so good. They've obviously brought in Milos Kerkez as well. So they've been active, very, very active in this window, and they've still got players that, for example, were honoured at the PFA Player Awards last night. For example, Mo Salah and Alexis McAllister and players like that. So Liverpool are very happy with the squad they have right now. But obviously, they're in a position where they can just sit back and wait and see what's happening with the Alexander Isak situation from a club and player perspective, but also from a valuation perspective as well, I suppose, because does this drama affect how much Newcastle potentially want for him? Well, that's something they'll find out over the next few days. But Liverpool are happy with the squad they have. Yes, they'd like, I'm sure, one more forward to come in between now and the end of the window. But if they don't get it, they're still going to be pretty happy with their business.
Right, Keith, how much will it take for Newcastle to say, you know what, that's enough, let's end this saga now? Or do you think they just want to keep him and reintegrate him?
No, Michael, look, they've tried, and I think that's what I was alluding to there, and what they were kind of, alluding to in their statement, that they've tried to facilitate a move for him this summer. Look, they weren't trying to sign Benjamin Sesko to play alongside Alexander Isak. They weren't trying to sign Hugo Ekitike to play alongside Isak. These were replacements, so they have tried, and I think they want Alexander Isak to realise that. And of course, we know they are really struggling to bring in not just one replacement, but two. They need two at the moment. Of course, Isak's not playing; he's essentially on strike. They lost Callum Wilson. They've been unable to even replace Callum Wilson. We know that Newcastle are trying to sign Yohan Wissa from Brentford. That would be the replacement for Callum Wilson. Now, if Newcastle managed to get Wissa in the door and Liverpool made a huge bid for Alexander Isak in the remaining 12 days of the window, I think Newcastle have probably got a decision to make. If Newcastle fail to bring in Wissa, there is no way Alexander Isak is leaving, because you'd be essentially leaving the club without a central striker. If some magic happened in the window and they managed to find a top-level replacement from somewhere for Isak and they brought in Wissa, then my understanding is that Isak would be allowed to go if Liverpool up their bid. Remember, it was £110 million plus add-ons that they offered, 4 weeks ago now. I think it would need to be another £25 million on top of that for Newcastle to sit up and listen. But until they've got even one replacement in, and they've failed to do that so far this window, there will be no deal happening.
I mean, Anton, you've spoken about Liverpool's options and said, if the window closes now, they would probably be happy. I mean, Hugo Ekitike has made a huge impact already, but he is their only real recognised number 9, Anton. So could they really do with another striker?
Yeah, I'm sure they'd like another striker, but look, the fact of the matter is Hugo Ekitike started his Liverpool career in a ridiculously impressive fashion, hasn't he? Scoring within minutes of the Community Shield, and then obviously scoring on his Premier League debut as well. And the way he took those goals as well inspires, well, a lot of optimism among Liverpool fans. Ekitike is one of the players training behind me here at Liverpool's training ground today. But obviously, look, we know that Liverpool obviously have been clearing the decks, especially up front, where they try to gain some of the revenue after their big summer spending. We know that Luis Diaz has left. We know Darwin Núñez has left. We know Bengan Doku has left as well. So they've lost 3 strikers in the last 3 forwards in the last few weeks as well. But it's not the fact that Liverpool want another striker. It's the fact that they want one of the best strikers in the Premier League. That's why we're all talking about Alexander Isak, and that's why I'm saying that they'll be happy if they don't necessarily feel they can meet necessarily the valuation that Newcastle want, or the player situation doesn't get resolved. Then if Liverpool don't get him, they're not going to be overly disappointed, because they're really happy with the business they've done and the business they may continue to do. But yes, obviously they want a striker. They don't want a striker, they want the striker, and that is Alexander Isak. But yeah, Liverpool very happy with the squad they have, very happy with the summer additions they've made, and very happy with where they are in the Premier League right now.
Anton, thank you. Now, Keith, back to you. Now, Newcastle fans aren't happy. It's going to take a lot to win everybody back over, isn't it? If he stays, I know what those fans are like. You know him more than anyone.
Yeah, I said earlier on another show, Michael, if I had £1 for every time I'd been asked this summer what's happening with Alexander Isak, I think I'd be able to pay for him myself. I'd be able to buy him for Liverpool myself. That is all everyone wants to talk about on Tyneside. They want to know what's happening to Alexander Isak. Look, I think the fans are upset, they're angry, they're really disappointed in his actions. This is a guy who's got 3 years left on his contract, and by the way, on a very, very lucrative contract as well. Look, he feels he's due more than that. He feels he's worth more than that, and I get that, but I think the way the fans see it is there's a way to go about it. You don't go on strike, you don't not train with your teammates, you don't make yourself unavailable to play in the opener against Aston Villa. Then I think it'll probably be the same for this match on Monday night against Liverpool as well. I don't think there's any chance he could play in that game given all the speculation surrounding him. So I think for them the way he's gone about it is really upset them. I think it's probably dividing the fan base. I think some of them have turned and they just want rid of him. But I think there's other fans who are really pleased with the club statement last night by kind of saying, look, we're in control of this here. This isn't the players' decision. This is the club's decision, and no one person is bigger than the club. So I think a lot of them, from the comments I'm seeing on social media and the fans that I speak to and I've spoken to this morning, I think they're quite happy with what the club have done last night, and they don't want him to be allowed to leave as easily as that. So there is a bit of a divide. We will see what happens as the days tick on towards the deadline. I wouldn't say this is the end of it now. I don't think this means he's 100% staying, because if Liverpool come back in with a huge offer and Newcastle manage to get in at least one other striker, it may leave them with a decision to make. But as Newcastle said in their statement last night, they don't foresee that happening. So they don't see both of those scenarios taking place. But as we know in the transfer window, a lot can change. What hasn't changed is the fact that Alexander Isak, about 100 yards away from me, is not part of that Newcastle United training session this morning that I just watched a little bit of. So that's been the case for weeks now. He'll train on his own this afternoon, away from the group, as he continues to agitate for a move away from the club. And it felt very much like that comment from last night on his social media felt like a last desperate try, because he knows the days are ticking down. The closer it gets to that deadline, the more difficult it's going to be for Alexander Isak to leave. What will be really interesting will be, once the window closes, how long until we see Alexander Isak back in a black and white shirt again. It's going to be fascinating.
And Keith, just finally, obviously, what does all this mean for Eddie Howe? We know how good he is, man management, that sort of style of management. But I mean, he's had so much to deal with this summer already, and this is just now another thing he's going to have to deal with as well.
Yeah, look, I feel for Eddie Howe in all of this, absolutely. He's been caught in the middle of it all, and look, he's a master politician, isn't he? He's represented the club terrifically well. The way he's kind of discussed the situation without criticising anyone. He knows he's the figurehead of the club. And he knows that he's kind of been sort of stuck in the middle of it. What he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to criticise the player too much either, because he knows there is a real chance that Alexander Isak could be back in his team at his disposal, and he'll be picking him because, look, he's arguably the best striker in the country, one of the best strikers in Europe. So he's kind of been... It's difficult for him. He's in a bit of a political quagmire at the moment, doesn't really know what to say, and he's having to field questions for us all the time. But what I will say is, I was in at the Newcastle training centre just next door earlier on this morning watching the training session. The rest of the players were all there. The mood was good, it was jovial, it was bright. I think they're all looking forward to the match on Monday night against Liverpool live on Sky. And I think although it looks like chaos from the outside looking in, the message I'm getting from the club, and certainly from what I saw at training this morning, is things are very calm, because they know they've got the power in this situation. Isak has 3 years left on his contract. And really, it's up to them what happens next. So, look, let's wait and see. We've got 12 days of the window to go. I thought maybe that might be an end of it last night, but no, I think this saga is going to drag on right till the end. And then hopefully for Newcastle and their fans, they can get some clarity and they can take it from there. But look, it's been a really horrible situation. It's got toxic at times, but behind the scenes, the message is we're calm. We've got a good point on the board away at Aston Villa at the start of the season, Liverpool next, and you would imagine the Newcastle team and their fans more than anything will be right up for that one on Monday evening.
Yeah, cannot wait for that Monday night football, Newcastle against Liverpool. Thank you very much, Keith, at Newcastle's training ground, and Anton at Liverpool's training ground. Right, it's Wednesday, which means we'll have Julien Laurent joining us. He'll be giving us his thoughts on Alexander Isak, Gianluigi Donnarumma, plus a bit of argy-bargy that's led to 2 players being transfer listed at Marseille. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Just a little update regarding Wesley Fofana. We're told that there are no issues with Chelsea as far as Wesley Fofana is concerned after a reorganisation of his Instagram account. We also understand Fofana is not the only person who has access to and organises his social media account. Unfortunately, as a result of that social media noise, Fofana has received a number of abusive comments on the account, some of which include racist language. Right, it's time to speak to European football expert Julien Laurent, who joins us on the show. Julien, it's time to talk about your favourite subject. It's no secret that Luis Enrique does not want Gianluigi Donnarumma. There's no movement so far on any deal to leave the club, though. Why is that?
Hello, guys. Yeah, I love talking about Donnarumma. I was on the show last week, a week ago, and we already talked about Donnarumma and the problems with PSG and why they were letting him go. A week on, I believe the discussions between Manchester City and PSG and the entourage of Donnarumma are still going on, and apparently are quite positive. That's the word I'm hearing. But I guess before City can do anything, they need to sort out their current goalkeeper situation, especially Ederson, who, as we know, there's a bid from Galatasaray in Turkey that has been in. And I'm not sure if City are happy with the deal or if they don't really want Ederson to go. I'm not sure why his preference would be leaving or staying. There's also Stefan Ortega, who's also there, as well as James Trafford, obviously. So there's too many goalkeepers in there. And before anything could happen with Donnarumma, they need to at least offload some of them. So I think unless there's something happening with Ederson or Ortega, but especially Ederson, there's not going to be much more of an improvement with the Donnarumma situation.
Yeah, Julian, is Manchester City his only option then? Does he have other options here?
No, I believe that right now they're the only club talking to PSG and talking to his people and Enzo Raiola, his agent. So I'm sure there will be suitors in Italy. You would think that a club like Inter Milan, even if he's a former AC Milan player, but Inter Milan, who have Jan Sommer as 37 years old, already looking at who could come after that. And Donnarumma, who's 26, probably ticks a lot of the boxes of what Inter Milan would want from a goalkeeper, especially the captain of their own national team. But for some reason, it's only City right now, certainly in the most advanced stage. I think PSG and Enzo Raiola have had a few contacts with other clubs, but nothing nowhere near like what City have been doing already.
Julien, moving on then to this big story in Marseille, a bit of argy-bargy going on. Adrien Rabiot and Jonathan Rowe have been put on the club's transfer list. Now, the club say that the decision was taken because of unacceptable behaviour in the locker room after the match at Rennes. You must know what happened, Julien. Come on, tell us.
I mean, I think this is an incredible story, Liv, really. The first bit is, as you said, this massive fight, and that was a proper fight between Rabiot and Rowe after the defeat at Rennes on Friday night, so opening game of the Ligue 1 season. Marseille played for an hour with 11 men against 10 away at Rennes, somehow managed to lose the game in the last kick of the game, pretty much. They go back to the dressing room. Geronimo Rulli, the goalkeeper, is very, very angry. He shouts at everybody, but especially at Jonathan Rowe. They have a bit of argy-bargy. I love this word of argy-bargy. It's one of my favorite words in English language. Argy-bargy. Rabiot steps in to separate Rulli and Rowe, then ends up having a fight himself with Jonathan Rowe. Then Rowe leaves the dressing room, comes back. They have another fight. And then we think it's pretty much over. This could be tension boiling up like we see in a lot of dressing rooms, especially after defeat. On Monday, the two players are expelled from the first squad, Rowe and Rabiot. And we think, okay, they will pay a fine, they will be back. There's a big game on Saturday against Paris FC, the first home game of the season. And actually, no, Tuesday afternoon, we were told, and then it was confirmed by a club statement, that both of them were placed on the transfer list. For Jonathan Rowe, we know that he was already, Marseille were looking at options to let him go, to get some money in, and to then reinvest in signing other players. For Rabiot, this is very, very strange because not that long ago, everybody at the club, from Roberto De Zerbi, the manager, to Pablo Longoria, the president, were saying how amazing Rabiot was, the best player in the squad, the best human being that they've ever seen. I mean, Longoria came out in a documentary not that long ago saying that I've never ever worked with somebody as good as Adrien Rabiot in my whole career. So from this to we don't want you in this club anymore, I don't know if it's justified, but there's a lot of people who think that actually Rabiot, with 1 year left on his contract, highest earner at the club, that Marseille actually took this fight as an excuse to try to find him a club and let him go and again reinvest the money that they would get in his transfer fee.
Well, they've obviously put them on the transfer list, Julian, but I mean, I suppose the question is, will they actually be able to sell them both?
You're right, because there's not much more time left now before the end of the transfer window. I think for Jonathan Rowe, because they've already been having contact with other clubs for him, it was pretty much already a possible sell. This is going to be easy. They want 20 million euros for somebody that I believe they paid 14 million euros to Norwich a year ago. They will get a club, whether that's an English club, and Sunderland are a club that are a big fan of Jonathan Rowe, or somewhere else in Europe. I don't think that will be a problem. Rabiot is the most interesting one because he's 30 years old to start with, because as I've been saying, he's on a big wages already. There are clubs in Italy like AC Milan with his former manager Max Allegri who are quite keen on him. A club like Juventus, probably if they could do the deal financially. There's English clubs who are also monitoring the situation. But Rabiot and his mum, who is obviously his agent, are quite tough in negotiation, and they do their business quite well. And there's not much time left between now and the end of the season for Marseille to agree a transfer fee for him, and for him and his mum to agree a transfer somewhere else. So this one is a very interesting one to follow.
Another argy-bargy, it's over here, is Alexander Isak. A further twist last night. Julien, what have you made of it all?
I think it's quite an incredible saga. And I think we expected a saga to happen with Isak or with somebody in the Premier League this season. Maybe not that big and not like that. Not when he refuses to train. Not when Newcastle seem to be quite strong on their positions. And I believe it could come from the top of the club, from the Saudis who, as we know, it's on their own terms, really, especially when they are the richest club in the world, even if they can't spend the money exactly like they would want to. So I really believe, and I've said it many times now, that Isak is not going to leave the club. I don't think Liverpool will put an offer in at the level that what Newcastle wants. And Newcastle's difficulty to find a replacement for Isak is also a problem here, whether it's Wissa, Trent Larsen, Nico Jackson. It hasn't proved easy for them to find a replacement. So it's an incredible situation when you think about it. And I'm not sure what would happen if Isak ended up staying at Newcastle and how you rebuild this relationship with the club, but more importantly, maybe with all the Newcastle fans that seem pretty angry right now, and rightly so. So it's an incredible position to be in. And I don't think there's an answer to it. I think he will be a Newcastle player come September the 2nd.
And just finally, Julian, then what about Nottingham Forest? They've been busy this window, made some really good signings. Cali Muendo is their latest. What can Forest fans expect from him?
Yeah, really good signing, I think, Liv. Really good players in Ligue 1. Scored 17 league goals last season. Had another good season before that with Rennes. He's a good finisher. He can play as a second striker, I guess, or wide. And you would think with Chris Wood being the one striker in a team that plays with one lone striker, it might be difficult for Cali Muendo to get a starting place in that team, but also to play a lot. There will be a lot of games. I think he will have enough times. He can play with Wood instead of Wood. Is obviously a different profile because he's not as strong and as good in the air or holding up the ball. But he has a good eye for goal, good awareness within the box. He can link up the play in a different style to Wood. So for 30 million, I think it's a very good signing for Forest, who needed another striker to be right up there with Wood. For a long season, because there's the Europa League, there will be the domestic cups, there's the Premier League, of course. So I like what they're doing with Douglas Luiz on his way in, also, and Omari Hutchinson and McAtee too. So I think Cali Muendo will fit really well in this team, whether it's as a starter or as a sub coming off the bench.
Thank you so much, Julian. Hopefully we're not talking about any more argy-bargies this transfer window.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Well, it's been a long old window for Abere Eze, with speculation building over his next destination. So much so that he's getting pretty familiar with our reporter Gary Cottrell. We'll be talking about his situation after the break, but I think it's clear where he stands on all the noise.
Look at him, right there in front of our cameras, joining in training. Absolutely 100% committed to the club. You can't say that, can you, about a couple of other players who are at the centre of similar sagas. He just said there, give it a rest.
Welcome back. It's been an incredibly busy transfer window so far, with well over £2 billion spent by Premier League clubs. Football finance expert and lecturer at University of Liverpool, Kieran Maguire, joins us live now. Kieran, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. We'll start with a deal that has dominated this summer window, and that's, of course, Alexander Isak. Let's start on the Newcastle side of things then. We know that they want that British record-shattering fee of £150 million. Just how much of a boost would that be for their PSR situation?
I think Newcastle United are actually in quite a strong PSR position to begin with. The first year of ownership from PIF it's now worked its way out of the system because they're assessed over 3 years. So they do have more flexibility. And remember, they have sold players in the last couple of windows as well. Certainly, if he goes, then that would allow a lot more spending to take place. But I don't think that they're being constrained. They're not being prevented from buying anyone under the current levels as far as their finances are concerned.
Kieran, as for Liverpool, we've already seen them make a significant outlay this summer, over £320 million. Any potential Isak deal would see them approach the £500 million mark this winter in terms of money spent. Do you think this deal is feasible from their perspective?
Yes, and part of the reason for that is that when you sign a player, you spread the cost over the life of the contract. So the players coming in are normally coming in on 5-year contracts. If you take £500 million, divide that by 5, it's going to be £100 million hit in what we call amortisation as far as the accounts are concerned. But Liverpool have done really well this season as far as the summer trading is concerned on the exit door as well. So Diaz has gone, Nunez has gone, Cancer has gone. He's an academy player. That's pure profit. So Liverpool, who always operate a very, very smart system and are never in danger of PSR issues, have got a lot of capacity to spend money as far as this summer is concerned.
I mean, just as a whole, Kieran, it's been an incredible window already. We're seeing money being spent more aggressively than ever before in the Premier League. I think we're about £100 million off breaking the record for money spent in a window. What's fueling all this spending?
Well, I think if you look at the drivers, we've now got 5 clubs taking place in the Champions League instead of 4. Champions League participation is worth up to £150 million in additional revenue. So those clubs that want to get into the Champions League, they're being more aggressive in terms of their spending. We do have the sort of the challenger clubs, the aspirational clubs, the likes of Villa and Newcastle, who are trying to do as much as they can because they want one of those 5 places. In addition to that, we've had the success of the Club World Cup from Chelsea's point of view. That was worth £80 to £90 million. Even Manchester City, who were knocked out relatively early, they still made £40 to £50 million. And some of the overseas markets, such as the Saudi Pro League, have been beneficial to the Premier League when, whilst there's been relatively few deals, it certainly has brought additional money into the Premier League. And that money then starts to circulate. And if a Premier League club sells to another Premier League club, that has a ripple effect because of the way that the profits are taken immediately and the costs are spread over a period of time.
Kieran, let's talk Chelsea then. They have up to 9 players they're looking to offload as they try and balance their books this summer. I mean, rival fans are often envious of how good they are at selling. How do they do it?
Well, Chelsea have been amazing. I've got a spreadsheet in front of me which shows that they've had total sales of players of around about £1.8 billion since the Premier League started. That's twice the amount of Arsenal. That's twice the amount of Manchester United. It's £700 million, at least more than Liverpool and Manchester City and Spurs. So I think what Chelsea have been very clever at doing is utilising their academy. You look at the level of sales, Conor Gallagher, Mason Mount and many others as well. And again, that's pure profit from their point of view. So that allows them to recycle those profits back into spending. They've got academies effectively all over the country. They're a very high profile club. And that investment that they've made over the course of the last decade in particular is really working. I was talking to one academy manager and he says, we're not a development centre of the club anymore. We're now seen as a profit centre. And there's no better profit centre in the country than that of Chelsea.
Well, what about Villa then? Because they're a team that have come up against PSR trouble this window. It's been a slow one so far for them. How do you assess their outlook at the moment? And you know, will they have any money to spend before deadline day?
I think the issue with Villa is that actually they're in a reasonably strong position from a PSR perspective as far as the Premier League is concerned. They sold the women's team to themselves. They've had some other deals go through as well over the course of the last 12 months, and it's not just the summer window that's being taken into consideration. Villa's challenge is in relation to UEFA's rules. Villa were put up on a charge by UEFA, and they have been fined for that. But I think what's perhaps gone under the radar is that Villa also now have to adhere to a business plan where effectively, from a cash point of view, they've got to be in a sort of a zero net spend position. So whilst they can buy and sell from Premier League point of view, they don't want to breach the rules of the UEFA sanctions, because those sanctions could become more severe if Villa don't actually comply with the particular rules. So therefore, I think Villa have to use the exit door as well as signing players, and I think that's why there was such a pushback from the fans of both Villa and Newcastle when Jacob Ramsey went at the weekend, because both of those sets of fans feel that the rules discourage new challenger clubs who have got new owners who have come in, who are ambitious, who want their clubs to accelerate, who want their clubs to be challenging on a more regular basis for Champions League places, and those rules perhaps, whether they were intended or not when they were derived, certainly have a negative impact upon those types of club.
Kieran, you flowed this perfectly for me, because I was going to say the likes of Villa and Newcastle, their fans often mention the so-called Big Six. OK, we've talked Liverpool, Chelsea and Man City. Let's talk about revenue. Tottenham get thrown into this, but I remember a summer, Kieran, Spurs didn't sign anyone. And look at their stadium. They've got Beyonce about 7-8 times a year. I mean, tell us more about them.
Spurs are very, very good at monetising the stadium. That they now have a deal with the local council which allows them to have up to 30 non-footballing events where you can have crowds of up to 60 odd thousand attending. And remember, during those, they'll be selling catering products, they'll be selling merchandise products. So Spurs are very, very savvy, and they have significantly improved their position as far as being able to be financially challenging to some of the other clubs. Spurs also operate, it has to be said, a very, very tight wage model. Their percentage of wages as a proportion of revenue is often in the low 40%. UEFA say it can go as high as 70%. So I think Spurs deserve a lot of credit. If they are in the Champions League this year, if they get to the further stages, I think we could be looking at matchday revenue of far more than £130 million. I think their commercial revenue since moving to the new stadium has more than trebled. When it comes to spending the money, I'm not qualified to say what a good footballer is or isn't, but I think Spurs fans would say perhaps they've been a bit hit and miss as far as the investment in the transfer market is concerned. You raised validly the point that they didn't spend money in a couple of seasons. I think that was mainly due to the transition from the old stadium to the new, where they had the costs incurred in terms of the stadium, but they didn't necessarily have the additional revenues.
Kieran, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose, speaking of Spurs, because I suppose one of the players that definitely would be a hit if they were to get it over the line would be Abere Eze. He is, of course, at Crystal Palace, and it could be a pivotal few days at the club. They are close to agreeing a deal worth £32 million with Leicester City for forward Bilal El Khanous. However, Palace have not yet fully committed to the transfer, and they are still exploring a possible move for Southampton winger Tyler Dibbling. I suppose, Michael, the El Khanous deal then is far from done, really.
Far from done, but it looks like in terms of the fee, they're both close. Now, it's interesting. Tyler Dibbling is an interesting one for me. We know Everton were very keen on him throughout this summer. We know Southampton were quite firm on the fee. Now, what's interesting for me is that is it Bilal El Khanous, or is it him and Dibbling? I mean, look, El Khanous, he's still featuring for Leicester. He played 45 minutes on Saturday. Didn't have the best 45 minutes, according to his manager, that he's not going to be a direct replacement for Ebiebe. We know Eze is such a quality footballer at the moment, but what we also know is as well, Palace recruit ever so well. They used to do it in the EFL all the time. Loads of clubs used to go and watch Eze. Loads of clubs used to go and watch Michael Elise. But it was Palace who bit the bullet and bought these players. So it's an interesting one to see what they do, because obviously Spurs fans are now waiting to see what Palace do, because they want to bring Eze in.
Yeah, I mean, why Tyler Dibbling? I mean, those that watch Southampton in the Premier League when he did play will understand, and, you know, him and El Canouse, it could potentially be both of them, but Tyler Dibbling feels like he's a star in the making.
Absolutely, he's got a lot of ability, but like El Canouse, still young, still raw, still got a lot to learn. You wonder if Will Still would maybe want that to go through as well to a Premier League club to sort of change them players and bring some in at Southampton. So that's an interesting one for me. I was a bit surprised that they rejected Everton's offer. I thought Everton's offer was a pretty big offer. So, look, it just shows you there is still so much to be done and so many dominoes affecting these deals. So, yeah, very interesting to see what happens over the next 24 hours in terms of Palace.
Yeah, and the fact that Palace are perhaps in for maybe both of these players, could that maybe suggest that progress is being made with Abere Eze? I mean, it was quite funny, wasn't it, him telling Gary Cotterill to give it a rest. He's talking
He's not the
about
first person said to Gary
during
Cotterill.
training.
Yeah. I mean, look, the interest from Spurs is clear. Look, talks will continue, I'm sure, today. They were continuing yesterday. There was media reports that it had all been completely agreed, and we told you that wasn't the case. And as you can see, it's not the case because he's still there training. And you know what? Gary Cotterill will be speaking to Oliver Glasner soon. And let's see what Oliver Glasner says. These are qualifiers for the UEFA Conference League. Let's remember they're not in Europe just yet. They have to qualify for these this league stage. So I imagine it's a big game for Oliver Glasner. I know some people are saying that Palace are going to rest a load of players. I'm thinking, are they? I'm not so sure about that. And I don't think they've got the option to rest players because it's not the biggest squad Palace have got. But we'll wait and see. I still expect that some, talks will continue today between the two clubs.
Yeah, I mean, the other potential exit at Palace is another big one. Could be Mark Guéhi. As of yet, there's been no breakthrough in discussions between Liverpool and Crystal Palace over a transfer fee. Palace value him at more than £40 million, but Liverpool don't want to overpay for a player who is, of course, into the final year of his deal. I mean, one thing's for sure, in both of these cases, with Eze, with Guéhi, that they have been the ultimate professionals. Both have stepped up, both have played when they know that potentially moves could be on the horizon.
Absolutely. Look, 12 months ago to this day, I think I was on with you or someone else. We were talking about Mark Guéhi potentially going to Newcastle for around £70 million. The information myself, Mark McAdam and colleagues were getting at the top every time was he is not pushing for this move. He's not. And people say, well, they should have taken the money back then. I said, no. You ask Crystal Palace fans. They kept Mark Guéhi and they had one of the best days of their footballing lives. Sons hugging mothers and fathers and families together. You can't beat that. I think what you can say, though, is that Palace do not want to lose this player for free. But what we also do know is there's an utmost respect for Steve Parish, the board, and Oliver Glasner. I know there was that shot of Mark Guéhi walking away at Chelsea, but he had to go for a routine drugs test.
Do you think that was the reason?
Yeah, I'm sure it was. But look, as you rightly say, Eze and Guéhi have been the ultimate professionals. They really have throughout this.
Yeah, we will await to see what happens with both Abere Eze and Mark Guéhi in this window. Right, what a busy show we've had so far here on Transfer Talk. We haven't even gotten around to talk about the 9 players Chelsea are looking to offload in the coming 2 weeks. We'll be looking at those names after the break. Welcome back to Transfer Talks, and big news now about Arsenal. Their forward Kai Havertz is currently being assessed over a knee injury. The German was absent from Arsenal's open training session put on for the fans at the Emirates on Wednesday. Havertz has only just returned from a long-term hamstring injury which kept him out between February and May of last season. The club are assessing the situation and are waiting for the injury to settle before further analysis. But I mean, Michael, this is tough for Arsenal, isn't it? Surely it's going to make them maybe think about dipping into the market for another number 9?
Yeah, you would have thought so. I mean, I'm waiting for the injury to settle down, but it doesn't sound great. You know, I go back to it, you know, obviously this is the league at the moment, but when that Champions League kicks in, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, you're going to need a good... When I looked at Arsenal's team on Sunday, when the team sheet came out on the bench, I thought, right, is this the year Arsenal actually have got really good depth, real depth on that bench? But it's an interesting one, and it looks like they might be exploring the market again.
How frustrating for Mikel Arteta. You know, of the whole search for a striker, they finally got Victor Gyökeres over the line to then have one of them. You know, Kai Havertz played a big part for them last season, scored a lot of Premier League goals. He must be sitting there thinking, oh, why? Yeah. Why does this have to happen?
Yeah, and also, you know, it's going to take time for Gyökeres. We know he's experienced in England, but taking him out on 70 minutes, taking him out on 65 minutes here and there in some matches, puts full responsibility on him as well. With Gabriel Jesus nowhere near coming back to the first team just yet. So information we see that they will explore the market is no surprise at all.
OK, a few updates to bring you from the team that Arsenal beat on the weekend, Manchester United. Michael, where do we stand then with Rasmus Højlund? Yeah,
Rasmus Højlund, AC Milan still working on convincing Manchester United forward Rasmus Højlund to join them. Milan have proposed a loan with an option to buy, thought to be around £40 million. Both United and Højlund prefer a permanent move, and it is thought there is enough room to discuss how the move could become permanent depending on certain conditions being met. But it seems this will come down to Højlund. So, yeah, that's an interesting one on him because obviously he had a pretty good pre-season at Manchester United, but clearly no future under Ruben Amorim.
Yeah, it doesn't also feel like Jadon Sancho has a future at Manchester United under Ruben Amorim, but as it stands, he's still at United. Still at
United, but Roma haven't given up on striking a deal for Jadon Sancho. Now, the Roma head coach is the main driver of this possible deal. He's a big admirer of the player. Roma have made an offer of around £20 million, which United would agree in principle. However, like the Højlund deal, the final decision rests with the player. However, as it stands, Sancho wants to explore other options. You've got Besiktas and Borussia Dortmund, among a number of clubs exploring that situation.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it, Jadon Sancho there? And finally, Anthony. Obviously a Manchester United player. Where could he go?
Well, this is the interesting one for them because Real Betis are the team working on various finance options to try and get a deal done for Manchester United forward Anthony. Look, those include basing the deal heavily on incentive-based payments. Ideally, United want to do a permanent deal, but with only 12 days to go until the window closes, and his desire to return to Betis can't rule a loan out here. And he had a really good loan at Betis last season, got to the Conference League final, lost to Chelsea, I think, didn't they, in that Conference League final? But it looks like he knows where he wants to go, so do United do a deal with Betis just to move him on?
Yeah. Well, that's Manchester United and outgoings there. What about outgoings at Chelsea then? Because I suppose their focus is on sales. RB Leipzig are in talks with Chelsea over the signing of Christopher Nkunku after having previously rejected a loan move from Bayern Munich on Sunday. Chelsea value the France international at £43 million this summer. And Michael, Chelsea want to get him out. They don't want a loan. They want it permanent. I suppose if they know that they can get him out, it's then a domino effect to bring others in.
Yeah, look, what we've said also in terms of Chelsea's incomings, they want to bring more wide players, Xavi Simons, Alejandro Garnacho, but Chelsea must adhere to UEFA's FFP rules. They've agreed to have this positive transfer balance. So, for example, if they bring in £250 million worth, they've got to sell £250 million. Given Chelsea's history with selling players, that's possibly achievable. So plenty still to do with Chelsea. And of course, they had that mini window, didn't they, before the Club World Cup? That seemed to go pretty well for them as well, didn't it?
Thanks for reminding everyone. How well have Chelsea sold this summer, Michael?
Very well indeed. Very well indeed. They do sell players incredibly well, don't they, Chelsea? They've sold so many already. They've made a lot of money as well, haven't they, so far? Can we have a look at the players they've sold so far? There's still the money they've brought in. Is that there? Is it there? Is it there?
We're waiting.
It's not there.
Oh,
But
it's not
Chelsea
there.
have made a lot of money. They've brought in a lot of money this summer, and there's probably still quite a few to come as well.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing with Chelsea is that, they've got, Christopher Nkunku, Raheem Sterling, Nicholas Jackson, Ben Chilwell, Renato Vega, just a few that they still need to get out. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. Like we say, all of those outgoings, I suppose Chelsea are relying on them in order to get perhaps Alejandro Garnacho and Xavi Simons over the line. Right, Good Morning Transfers returns tomorrow at 9 a.m. European expert Andy Brassel will be with us. We're back for Transfer Talk, returns tomorrow at midday with former Newcastle midfielder. Before that, the Transfer Show returns at 4 and 7 p.m.